Welcome to another lab in Network Support Services, Windows Networking. I will be hosting this lab in HyperV. You as the student will follow along, answering all questions and taking the appropriate screenshots as shown in your worksheet. So let's begin. 70-740 Lab 15, implementing high availability and disaster recovery options in Hyper-V. In this lab, we'll be looking at some ways to install Hyper-V other than using our server manager. We'll be moving a VM storage location. We'll move a VM from one host to another host. And then we'll also look at the steps required for configuring and enabling Hyper-V replication. Now, I'm going to use my two Hyper-V hosts that I used for my previous video regarding Hyper-V replication and creating replicas. So I'll be using Hyper-V host and Hyper-V replica. Those will replace my LUN-SVR1 and SVR2 machines. The host will simulate my SVR2 and the replica will simulate my SVR1. Now, first and foremost, a lot of times we're going to install roles using our graphical user interface, our server manager, right? Let's go ahead and get logged in here. You don't always have to use your graphical interface. What if you want to install from the command line? We can do that. So what we can do is we can go ahead, we can click Start, and we go to PowerShell. In PowerShell, we can use DISM. DISM is Deployment Image Servicing and Management. Remember, this is a command line tool that you can use to mount and service Windows images before deployment as well. We can use it to get information about our WIM files when we're working with imaging. We can use it to mount virtual and get information about virtual hard disks. We could use it to capture, split, and manage WIM files. In this case, we can use it to install roles. So if we type DISM and then do a /online, another slash, enable dash feature, another / feature name with a colon, and then you need to type in without any spaces Microsoft, a hyphen, hyper, another hyphen, and V. You press enter and it will install that role for you from the command line. Now, this does not install the management features, so you still may need to install the management features. Why wouldn't I do that here? Well, you know what? Maybe I only want to install the role in this server, but I don't want to have to log on to this server to be able to manage it. I'm going to install those management tools somewhere else, like a jump box. It could be a Windows 10 machine that's been secured on my domain. I install these administration tools on that, and I manage my servers from there. If you don't have to log into a server, don't. Every time you log into a physical server, that's a security risk. Keep your servers as secure as possible. So that would install the Hyper-V role on this computer. We would have to restart to enable it, and then subsequently from somewhere we would need to install those management tools. Now, we did do that because we're using this in our test environment. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to open up our Hyper-V. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to right click that icon down in the taskbar and pin it. This way, if I have to exit out, I can just go here and open it with a single click. I don't have to go to Tools and do anything like that. So this would be our first exercise in installing Hyper-V. Let's go ahead and do our second exercise, which is moving our VM storage location. What we can do is what we're going to do first is we're going to create a new VM. We're going to go virtual machine. Next, we're going to call it test VM. We're going to store it in a different location. We're not going to use the default. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make the storage location for this one VM. I'm going to click next. We're going to leave it Gen 1. We're not going to even configure or set this VM up. We're not going to set this VM up, so we're just going to give it some bare necessities. 256 mega RAM. We'll say use dynamic memory. We haven't even configured anything on here. We're not going to configure a switch. We're just going to leave it not connected. We're going to create a hard disk, but we're only going to do 5 gigabytes in size. We'll click next, and we're going to say install an operating system later. We're not even going to try to load an ISO right now. We'll click next and we'll click finish. So here we can see our test VM. How do we move that? First off, why would we want to move the storage location? Well, maybe this is a hypervisor that's been in production for some time and you're starting to run out of room on a RAID array. You may not be in a large enterprise where you're connected to very flexible SANs. Perhaps you have a RAID 5 or a RAID 6 array and you're starting to run out of storage space. So you've configured a new RAID array because storage has gotten less expensive, so you were able to double the amount of storage for your new array, their new disks. It's where you want everything to go. So you need to move your VMs in your story and where they're being stored. So what we can do is we can simply select our test VM. We can right click and select move. On our wizard screen, we're going to go ahead and we're going to click next. And we're going to say move the virtual machine storage. We'll click next. And what we're going to do is there's 3 different options here. We're going to select move all the virtual machines data to a single location. Optionally, you could move only the hard disk. So you could leave perhaps the configuration files in one location and move your hard disk to a different location, or you could specify individual locations. We're going to go to a single location. That single location is going to be C:\VM2. We'll click next. We can see here all our files will go to the same location. We click finish. And we're done, just that quickly. Let's take a look in our settings. And if we select the hard drive, we can see that it no longer is in VM, but it is in VM2. It's just that easy to move locations for storage or your files. Let's go ahead and do our next exercise. In our next exercise, we're going to move our VM from one host to a different host. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go into HyperV settings for the host. We want to go to live migrations. We need to select enable incoming and outgoing live migrations. Now, we're going to select use any available network for the live migration. However, you may not. You may specify a specific IP address for live migrations. Why might you do that? Would you want to use your production network to start moving virtual machines that could be hundreds or terabytes of size on your production network? What would that do to your production network? You may have a lot of users calling up and complaining that the network's not responding properly. If you have a separate network, for example, if we click on local server, we can see, and just give it a moment here, that we have both our cluster network and London network available. That we have both our cluster network and our London network available. Well, our London network is where all of our production traffic would go, all our user traffic. We wouldn't want to intrude into that. We could specify that only on the 192.168.100 network is where we move our VMs. For this exercise, we're going to go ahead and we're going to simply select use any available network. Now what we're going to do is we're going to expand that plus right beside live migrations. And we'll select advanced features. So here you can specify how your authentication is going to take place. If we're on our network, if we're on our domain, we can use Kerberos because we can use that for our authentication. If you're going to use Cred SSP, the security support provider, you must log on to the server to perform a live migration. We're going to use Kerberos. We're going to go ahead and we're going to click OK. And then what we're going to do is we're going to right click on our test VM. And here again, we're going to select move. We're going to click next on our wizard screen. But this time, we're going to move the virtual machine. We're going to select that first option. Now it asks us, what is the name of our destination computer? We're going to use, oops, that's spelled wrong, HyperV-Replica. And we're going to click next. Not configured to send or receive live migrations. Well, that's right. It's not, is it? Let's back up a second. How can you move if the other one's not configured for live migration? Let's go do that. We'll go back over to our manager. We're going to open up our HyperV replica. We'll get logged in on that. All right, here we go. We'll go ahead and we'll close that. We're going to go to our Hyper-V Manager. Again, I'm going to pin that. We'll select our server. We're going to go to Hyper-V Settings. We're going to select Live Migrations. We're going to allow incoming, because remember, that's allowing incoming and outgoing. So you need to do it on both. You have to select Live Migrations to allow it to go out. You have to select Live Migrations on your other server to allow incoming. Well, once more, we're going to say use any available network. We're going to expand and select advanced features. And we want to use the same authentication protocol. So we're going to select Kerberos and click OK. Now, where were we? We're going to right click. We're going to go move on our wizard. We're still here. We still had that up, right? We're going to click next. And you know what? Just to make sure our spelling's correct, I'm going to browse. I'm going to type in hyper. I'm going to hit enter. Should be able to get a list. There we are. We'll select the replica. We click next. Now, right here, again, we've got a couple options for how we're going to move. We could move just the virtual machine, and it doesn't move the hard disks. We could move the machine's data and select where to move the items. So we would indicate where each item is going to get moved to. Or we can say move the virtual machine's data to a single location. That's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead, we're going to click next. And it says, what is the destination folder that you want to store this at? Well, we're going to tell it on that destination, make this folder. We're going to click next, and we're going to click finish. Our virtual machine is gone. It no longer resides on our Hyper-V host. Let's go over to our Hyper-V replica. There it is. What I'd like everyone to do is take a screenshot showing that we now have our test VM on our HyperV replica and paste this into step number 17. If you've got that screenshot, we're done with the exercise. Now for our fourth exercise, let's take a look at configuring and enabling HyperV replication. Now to do this, we're going to be doing it in our cluster. So what I've done is I've switched our virtual machines. We're now using SRV1 and SRV2 because that's where in our previous lessons we built our failover clustering. So on SRV2, what we're going to do is we're going to go into File Explorer and we're going to this PC and then we're going to go to our C drive. And I'm going to create a new folder and I'm going to name that folder data. And we want to share that. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to go properties, I'm going to go sharing, advanced sharing. We're going to say share this folder. And for permissions, I'm going to give everyone full control. We're going to click OK. We're going to click OK. And we're going to click close. Now I'm going to jump over to SRV1. On SRV1, what we're going to do is we're going to open up our failover clustering. In our cluster manager, what we're going to do is we're going to expand out and we're going to select roles. We're going to select a new role. We're going to configure a new role. We're going to click next and we're going to select HyperV Replica Broker. We're going to click next. For the name, we're going to call it HyperV Replica. And for the address, we're going to assign .64. Because remember, each one of these is an object in DNS, right? As far as our clients are concerned, these are computers. They have to have a unique name. They have to have a unique IP address. We're going to click next. We got our confirmation screen. We click next. It's configuring our resources. Let's just jump over to our domain controller and make sure that that's happening. And there it is. Our resource record was automatically created. We can click finish. But before I click finish, I'd like everyone to take a screenshot and paste this into step number 19. All right, you got your screenshot? Okay, I'm going to click finish. If you didn't get it yet, pause that video, go back and get that screenshot. Now, in our roles, we can see we now have our scale out file server. We also have our HyperV Replica Broker running. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to go to replication settings. In our replication settings, we're going to say enable this cluster as a replica server. We're going to use Kerberos. We're also going to click to allow replication from any authenticated server. And then we're going to specify the location. And that's going to be /lun-svr2 / yep, you guessed it, the data folder that we shared out. Let's go ahead, take another screenshot, and paste this into step number 25. Now that you've got that screenshot, we're going to click OK and accept those settings. Should take just a moment more. I got an error. You know what? I know what that is. When we were doing the previous exercise, when we created that scale out file server, we created a share called data. And that still exists. So we can't share using that data. When I created the share over here on SRV2, I didn't even realize it when it occurred. Let's take a look here. Here's our data folder, sharing, and look at the share path, data 2. Didn't realize that. Didn't catch that. You got to catch it, right? Okay, so let's append that data to, and we're going to click apply. And there we are. And okay, so ensure the inbound firewall for port 80 for TCP replica listeners enabled on each node. So we want to take a look at that. I'm going to do that. We're going to go Tools, Firewall, Advanced, Inbound. Let's go down here, Hyper-V, Listener. Let's right click and enable. Yep, we're going to do it over here as well in SVR2. Inbound, Hyper-V, Replica, Listener, HTTP. We can close that. We can close that. Let's go ahead and click OK. In our cluster manager, we're running. Now let's answer our third question. We've only had 3 questions. Which inbound firewall which inbound firewall rule needs to be put in place? Well, we just saw it, right? The inbound TCP exception for port 80. If you want to be more specific, I mean, that's fine. If you just say inbound TCP exception for port 80, that's fine. If you want to be more specific and say the Hyper-V replica HTTP listener TCP in needs to be enabled, that's even better. But as long as you're stating that an exception for TCP port 80 has to be enabled, that's perfect. Okay, so we're just about done. Let's go and on our SVR1, we're going to right click Start. And what we want to do, you know what, I forgot that they changed that on here between the original instructions and now. We're going to left click Start and we're going to type in Control Panel. We're going to go to the Control Panel. Has been some changes since these instructions were originally written just not that long ago. In our Control Panel, we're going to go to System and Security, and here's our Windows firewall. This is another way to get to it, right? So we could go in there and do those firewall rules that way. You know what? It's easier just to go here, and we've already done that, so we don't need to do it again. However, what I do want to do is I just want to double check. Let's make sure, everybody knows we did it. Let's go back and look again. Hyper-V Replica HTTP Listener. You can get to that same thing through Control Panel. If you go here and go to System and Security and then go to your Windows Defender Firewall and then Advanced Settings. A lot more clicks, right? A lot more clicks just to do the same thing. It's easier just to go through tools. That takes care of that. Now, let's go over to SVR2. In SVR2, what we're going to do is we're going to go into our Hyper-V Manager. We're going to right-click on SVR2, and we're going to select our settings. Let's go ahead and take a screenshot of our settings. You'll notice here under Replication Configuration, we didn't modify this. This was done for us. This is what I want you to get in your screenshot. The fact that we didn't make any changes to our Hyper-V for those replication configurations in SRV 1 and 2. SRV 2 has been modified as the replica server. That was done by our broker for us. Get that screenshot, paste it into step number 35. Now, we've got the ability to run Hyper-V in our cluster, right? Because we've got Hyper-V installed in both SRV1 and SRV2. Let's do our lab challenge. We're going to create a clustered virtual machine. That gives us fault tolerance. Highly available virtual machines can be migrated to another physical host in a failover cluster to provide continuing service when a current host goes down, or perhaps you need to do maintenance. We're going to jump back over to SRV1. On SRV1, we're going to go back into our cluster manager, and we're going to select that nodes role. It's already selected, and we're going to right click on it. We're going to choose virtual machines. Yep, you guessed it, new virtual machine. We're going to create it using SRV1. On the wizard screen, we're going to click OK, next. For the name, let's call it failover VM. That's what we're doing, right? For the location, let's store it in a different location. Why do you think we'd want to do that? This is a clustered system. We want the storage to be somewhere where it's available to either VM. That way, when we do our failover, we don't have to worry about the storage. We're going to use that data2 directory that we shared out on SVR2. However, it could easily be on a SAN. //lun-svr2/data2. We're going to click next. For the generation, we're going to leave it Gen 1. For memory, we're just going to leave this stuff alone. We're going to click next. We're not going to do any networking right now. This is just demonstration purposes, right? For our virtual hard drive, we'll let it make a virtual hard drive, and we're going to say 5 gigabytes in size. The way that we're doing this, let's answer our fourth question. That fourth question is, where is the virtual hard disk being stored? We're not giving it a local storage path. We're going to store it on our network. Your answer to question 4 is right there on your screen under location. whack-lun-svr2/data2/failover-vm/virtual hard disks. Get that answer typed into question 4, and if you want to, pause the video. We're going to be moving on. We're going to click next. We'll say install an operating system later. We're not going to go through all that. This is, like I said, demonstrations, and we're going to click finish. Before I click that finish, though, I want everyone to get another screenshot and paste that into step 12. All right, I heard you hit that click. We're going to click finish ourselves, and we're going to move on. Make sure you got that screenshot pasted in. So now we have the ability, we can see here, there's our failover VM. It's turned off right now, right? And it's on SVR1. Well, we could move it. We could do a live migration. We could do a quick migration. Live migration, why is live migration grayed out? Well, live migration is used for a running virtual machine. It has to be running for us to use the live migration. But it allows you to move a virtual machine with no interruption to the state of that virtual machine. If someone's using that, accessing that machine, there's no interruption. You can seamlessly move it from one server to another without interruption. Our quick migration, that allows us to do it. So we could say select, and we could move it to SVR2. That's how we do that. Okay, so what we're going to do now here is on our lab challenge, we're going to destroy a cluster. I mean, it's fun building things, but it's even more fun tearing them down, right? Understand that to delete or remove a cluster, you must destroy the cluster. I mean, it sounds cool, doesn't it? But before you can destroy a cluster, you have to remove any clustered roles. So first off, we're going to right-click that failover VM, and we're going to choose remove. Yes, we do. Okay, it's gone. We're going to right-click the HyperV replica, and we're going to select remove. We're going to click OK. We clicked yes. Yeah, yes, okay, they're interchangeable, right? Okay, now We still have file server running, our scale out file server, so I'm going to right click and I'm going to say remove. Yes, I do. Now that would have destroyed that data share that I'd previously made. We could have used just the plain data. And I just want to see if everything still shows up in here. Yep, we're back to where we were. Got no roles. I'm going to right click on that cluster one and I'm going to go down to more actions. I'm going to say destroy cluster. Do you want to permanently destroy it? Yeah. I want to see it blow up. Well, that was kind of anticlimactic. Nothing, no explosions. But you understand the process. Don't just destroy the cluster. Get those roles removed first. Then you can remove that cluster. All right. Thank you for reviewing our Lab 15 and 70-740. I'll see you in the next lesson or lab.